We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunashish.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes-Gandes. Sorry, Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Walal Kidak.
Here.
And Mr. Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we had you on audio as well as visual. And Mr. Bryson.
Present.
Ms. Hughes-Gandes.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Atkinson.
Here.
Mayor Weldon.
Here.
And for the record, Deputy Mayor Hale and Ms. Waller absent this evening, but a quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we have a special order of business. We have legislative citations presented by Senator Keel. Senator. Anywhere you want, right there is fine.
Do you care who we do first?
I don't care that either.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly. I appreciate the opportunity to present legislative citations that I was privileged to sponsor. They are co-sponsored by all three members, or the other two members of our delegation who were not able to be here tonight, both one out of town and one previously obligated, but they asked me to send their good regards. So I wonder if Mr. Watt might join us up here. The Alaska State Legislature this year adopted this citation in honor of Rory Watt after a long and distinguished career of public service in Alaska, and unusually for many in public service, I think all of it with one entity, all of it with the city and borough of Juneau. It's a remarkable accomplishment. It's maybe not the norm these days, but Rory began with the city and borough of Juneau as a seasonal inspector. And someone noticed some capacity there, I think, because over the years, he worked his way up in the engineering department, became head of engineering. Later, we were cutting the budget, so we merged engineering and public works. I see Ms. Watto is here. We almost merged the airport in there. It was close. But he headed up engineering and public works. The general prediction was that was impossible. It would never work. You couldn't combine the two. But we gave it to Rory Watt, and he managed to pull it off. Rory then, we won't give the entire resume, but worked his way up. We hired him as city manager. I happened to be on the assembly when that happened. Most people no longer blame me for that. But Rory served our capital city with great distinction. He really, truly dedicated himself to the success of the enterprise and to the success of the people who lived here. And that's no small thing. So the citation, I won't take the time to read. The mayor has given me a time limit, which is very wise. But it speaks to a lot of both the big accomplishments, some of the large public works projects, and also some of the grotty bits, the unglamorous, sometimes annoying things that have to work if a city's going to work. And we could always rely on Rory to lead the team of people who made that happen. The other thing I'll just flag in there, and I couldn't help but write it into the citation. These things are usually sort of recitations of a resume, but was Rory's incisive mind. The assembly would often fill the microphone. The assembly would often or occasionally lock up. We'd spend hours. We'd go in circles. And the general observation would be, good Lord, they're never going to get out of this one. And somehow, Rory had the ability to come up with a set of 4 or 5, or in one case 7, ordered decision points that if we took them one at a time, could get us through it to whatever the resolution was going to be. That's a rare skill. And it served not just the assembly, but the people the city serves over and over again. So Rory, on behalf of a unanimous Alaska State Legislature, I present you a citation honoring your career of public service. It is signed by the Speaker of the House, by the President of the Senate, and all three of us who are privileged to have Juneau in our legislative districts, with our thanks for your career of service. Thank you. The good news is, Rory, there's still time to get to the Rock Gym before they close, which is the only place I see him anymore. Ms. Gladaszewski, I wonder if I could impose on you. The second citation, Madam Mayor, that I am honored to present tonight is to Maria Gladaszewski, who is not one of those people who did an entire career in a single organization. She bounced back and forth between the city and borough of Juneau, both as staff and as a planning commissioner, as an assembly member, but also the Department of Fish and Game for many years. And again, this is an opportunity for the legislature to honor someone with a heart and a head for public service, for making things work, and for the policy vision that appreciates the balance that has to exist. Whether that's her time on the Assembly, her time on the Planning Commission, with a keen understanding that for there to be a good quality of life, people have to have jobs and an income, and nobody's going to work and live in a place that doesn't have good quality of life. You have to pay attention to both sides of the coin. Or whether that's years and years serving in the Division of Wildlife Conservation, making sure that there is some attention to non-game species as well as those we Alaskans hunt. And Maria's record of accomplishment there is significant. I don't know of anyone who's done more to ensure that there is funding for refuges and for watchable wildlife than Ms. Gladaszewski did. She doesn't get a lot of credit for that. But when I reached out to folks who worked with her at Wildlife Conservation and asked about her personal accomplishments, that was one of the top ones. A groundbreaking study early in her career of the economic value of wildlife, both consumptive and non-consumptive uses, was another. But other things came through. The working environment across the department was something that folks flagged as a major accomplishment. And with her personal accomplishments over and over and over again, people talked about her diligent and constant work to make sure that Fish and Game was a place that worked, where the job got done every day. And we saw that same approach here on the Assembly. So it is my great honor and privilege to present to you another unanimous legislative citation. We can be unanimous sometimes, honoring your career of public service to both the city and borough of Juneau and the state of Alaska, with the thanks of grateful Alaskans. Congratulations.
Thank you, Senator Keel, for that. Two very distinguished individuals in the city's world. Next up, Mrs. Manager. Madam Manager, do we have any agenda changes? Thank you. Madam Clerk, public participation on non-agenda items. I have one on Zoom, but I imagine there might be some in the back.
I believe there are more in the back if you want to take the one on Zoom. Mr. Yucatel is bringing up our sign-up sheet. Go ahead. mayor there.
Thank you, Mr. Yukatel. All right, we will start with the person on Zoom. Please bring over, and I apologize for this pronunciation, Amy Bologna? Bologna? Do you need to see this phone?
I am not seeing her on Zoom at this time, Madam Mayor. I have it right here, but I'm not seeing, the only phone number we have is not this individual, and I'm not seeing her name in our list.
All right. Amy, if you're on there and we're not seeing you, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll move on to some others.
I think we're
Okay,
ready.
Madam Clerk, will you keep an eye on that? And next we'll go to Mark Whitman. Please come up and state your name and area of town you live in for the record. And you have 3 minutes, and press the red button and make it green, and you should be able to speak into it. Very good.
Mark Whitman from Douglas, Alaska. Madam Mayor, Assembly members, your Telephone Hill plan takes the green living emerald crowning our city, pops it out with a pry bar, and fills that space with glass, concrete, and aluminum. Families, gardens, legacies, all removed before the true price emerges. Erase the memory of what real food is, and you might convince people to eat anything you call food. Likewise, remove every trace of this real living neighborhood, and people might believe that cubicles stacked 100 deep are homes. Affordable housing is the dated book. Like the pitch at a carnival, you keep telling us that the only way we can lose is if we walk away from your plan. Change the plan, people. Take time out. Wisdom is doing nothing at all. My proposal, take a picnic. Pack yourself, your friends, and family a lunch, and some busy cruise ship day this summer, sit down on Telephone Hill, have a meal together, and contemplate the island of peace and sanity you sit on in downtown's frenzy. Take a year. Why not? You have a tsunami of budgetary needs facing you. Take a break from the agendas of realtors, engineers, and architects. Listen to your heart. Hear what makes home leading people to live in one place for a lifetime. In a sea of momentary visitors, why remove the green anchor haven so well lived in? Why remove the green heart of the city? Take time to listen. Hear what this place says, all its stories through time. Beyond money is the treasure of people living their entire lives in one place, endlessly enriching the community. Sacrifice the circle center, end this green measure of life and neighborhood, and you ruin the fulcrum of balance in our midst. Take a time out. Take a year. Have a picnic. Have many picnics. I gift you this basket to make it easier. Sit down and feel the value of home in a storm of busyness. Find your center at the center. Hold it. Don't lose sanctuary. This picnic pause lets us jump ahead to a time when we know home and garden as wealth beyond speculation are placed to be a living birthright. Do nothing, take time out, do no harm, wait and listen to the verdant heart. Reach the wisdom of no action. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Whitman? Thank you for the testimony tonight and the picnic basket. Next, we have Ramona Wigg. And he's left the mic on, so you're good to go there. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Ramona Wigg, and I'm Juno White since 2002. And Madam Chair, Assembly members, I did email. But the reason I'm here is to change something that was put into place in the 1970s. And it is in reference to the commercial vehicle CPV process for taxi cab licenses permits governed by CBJ code 20-40. And so what I would like to see is the change from 6 vehicles for a new transportation business down to 1 vehicle, maybe 2. But back in the day, things were a lot different. It hasn't been brought up in, like I said, since the 70s. So short and sweet, that's what I want. I wanted to bring to you guys to see if we could get that changed. I was told this was the place to do it.
Thank you.
you.
Any questions, Mr. Bryson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify this. So right now, in order for somebody to start a cab company or a taxi cab company, they would need to have a minimum of 6 vehicles. And your request is to take that down to 1 or 2 vehicles to start a new taxi cab service?
Yes,
That's the request?
yes. Really briefly, I called all the cities in Alaska and 10 out of state, and they all require 1 vehicle. That's how it started, and that's how it's always been. The insurance for 1 vehicle, out of state, in state, is $10,000 per vehicle. That's just the insurance. That's not license and fees and everything else that goes along with it, maintenance, whatever. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Smith? He's on Zoom.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Week, for being here and for writing. I will ask staff about this later.
Can we get you to speak up a little bit?
Sure, how's this?
A little better, but just speak as loud as you can.
Very good. I will project my voice. Ms. Wigg, I'm going to speak with city staff about it later. This isn't the right time of the agenda or to do that. But when you've spoken with city staff, what is the rationale, if you've heard any, for having it be a 6 vehicle minimum? Is it just, anyway, any rationale you've heard from staff about the reason that it was set at 6?
Yeah, Ms. Wigg, if you've spoken to city staff, what's the rationale instead of 6 vehicles to have 6 vehicles instead of 1 vehicle to start a new business? That's what he's asking you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
If you've spoken to city staff, what's the rationale to have 6 vehicles instead of 1 vehicle for a new business?
Well, I have. I spoke to, it was before Rory was leaving, about a month before, and I contacted his office, spoke to, actually I spoke to Robert. And I've been pursuing this off and on for about 3 years now. This is the first time I've attended an assembly meeting, but, and I spoke to the police department, and that's where I learned, speaking to the CBJ in there, that this was something that I guess the owners back then got together, the 6 guys or whoever it was, and said, hey, kind of like this. It's like, you know what, let's change this so where we can have 2 companies, make it easier for everybody. And anyone who wants to start a new business can go through us. And the requirement will be however, starts with 6 vehicles.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think that answers it pretty much. He's nodding. Any further questions? Thank you for your testimony tonight.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tony Tangs. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Tony Tangs. I live downtown on Willoughby Street. I did live on Telephone Hill for 28 years. I once again talk with you about Telephone Hill, and thank you. I promise I won't be coming every time. And last time, I was here a couple of weeks ago and you were talking about their downtown having lost so many X amount of living spaces, and that part of the rationale that you're going through in building more spaces downtown is to replace those. And part of me has been looking at all of the buildings, the living spaces that have been built in town all over the place, out in the valley especially, but there have been some downtown. I mean, even right across from the legislature where you put in the legislative housing, aid housing last winter. I mean, that's what, 32 spaces there that, you know, I don't know whether that was factored into that number that you all were thinking that we had lost, but I wonder how you have, whether you even consider the whole gain that we have made in your, you know, what seems to be driving part of this whole thrust to build on Telephone Hill. And I know you were talking about, this is a project that was developed seemingly with an invisible hand behind it. The public was not invited in until after the train was already rolling, and we had the decision to choose how many cars we wanted on the train and what color to paint it maybe. It was already rolling, it was already, we get to come in and say, you know, how big we want it to be or whatever. So I want to look at that. It's a valuable thing to sell your history, to sell this charm, to sell this incredible green heart of the city that Mark Whitman was talking about. And it's valuable. I know you talked about having X amount of units for low income or moderate income. And I'm wondering, if you sell something so precious and priceless, I hate to think of it that way, but maybe you should just go for the devil's bargain and sell it for the highest price. I hate to think of just lobbyists buying everything. They probably would buy most of them anyway, so they can have better proximity to our legislators. But maybe you need to just sell for the money, because that's what it seems to be about anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Tangs. Any questions for Mr. Tangs? Thank you for your testimony tonight. Next, we have Shoshana Satigman. Sorry, I probably slaughtered that. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Shoshana Seligman, 30-year resident in Juneau and over 10 years on Telephone Hill. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Madam City Manager. It seems like this is boiling down to be about vision, and whose vision? You know, who gets the most points? Is it to sell for the most money? Is it to preserve what's most precious? Well, one vision I hope we all agree on is that Telephone Hill doesn't end up just being a pit, you know, that lies fallow, similar to the pit that we used to call the center of downtown that was right across the street from what used to be McDonald's. Do you remember? Now it's Heritage Coffee. Anyway, as far as vision goes, once again, I'm just asking, as I did the first meeting when our previous Deputy Mayor, Maria Gladaszewski, said, hey, I wouldn't want to live under this kind of pressure. Give these people some time, you know, give them fair notice. Let's get our plan in place. Let's get the funding in place and then proceed. I mean, Mayor Weldon, doesn't that seem reasonable? So I keep repeating myself because I haven't yet gotten any assurance that, yep, this is what we're going to do. This is, you know, how we're going to proceed. And I'm pretty sure anybody here would be pretty nervous if where they were living, whether they owned it or not, was being discussed on a regular basis. There were all those years prior to this when it wasn't such a hot topic. But my second concern is that up until this point, CBJ isn't allowing anybody else to move in. So when vacancies occur, they just sit there, which is usually not such a good idea. So in my situation, let's say, for example, my housemate moves out, I'm hoping that it's reasonable to expect that I will just continue to pay my fair share because no one else is being allowed to move in. Does that make sense, Madam Mayor?
I don't know what the leases are. And it's your turn to testify. It's not my turn to answer questions.
Okay. And then third is on a regular basis, not only residents, and I guess you guys know this, but also the tourists float up there. And erroneously, Telephone Hill isn't on any map. It's not designated as such. But they find their way up there, they wander up there, and they have a really jolly time for a few blocks looking around. And sometimes I play piano for them, and sometimes there's impromptu skits and interactions and entertainment. But not only the tourists, but also our friends and our fellow Juneauites. I've just heard so much concern about the city's debt and not as much concern about speeding ahead on Telephone Hill. So I think maybe I'm being convinced myself to adopt maybe some of Mark Whitman's approach to, hold your horses.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Seligman, sorry.
Oh, thank you. You want me to push this button?
Well, we have more coming up, so. Next we have Bruce Garrison. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Bruce Garrison. I'm a lifelong Juneau resident. I've skied here for 61 years. I'm a lifetime member of the National Ski Patrol. I did 8 years on the Eagle Crest board, 3 of which were the president, and I stepped down in 2020. And I'd like to start with thanking the Assembly and everyone that serves on boards. It is a lot of work, and I understand that. And most people haven't a job. But I'm very concerned about Eagle Crest going forward. Those concerns went out in a letter that came to you guys and the manager's office and the Eagle Crest board before their meeting. And we actually put it out online, and we have about 530 people that agree with that. And we raised 3 concerns. One of them was hiring the new general manager, which I will thank Dallas Hargrove at the last Eagle Crest HR meeting. He did a pretty good job of presenting the plan for hiring a new GM. But a lot of people, including myself, felt it was very aggressive to have someone here by the middle of September. The short and midterm plan at Eagle Crest, we the skiers are very concerned about. That was our second thing in this. 2014, 2015, Eagle Crest operated 5 days on the upper mountain, and it really showed the importance of snowmaking. And right now, there's nobody up there whose job is snowmaking. So it's a real concern going forward. And I turned 70 this year, 61 years skiing. I don't want to miss a season because we didn't get our act together. I really am looking forward to the city manager's meeting on April 15th and that, or July 15th, sorry, that she is going to do a presentation, hopefully with a plan, timelines, and what's going to happen with the gondola. And I'm really looking forward to that. And then lastly, I want to briefly say next month, the HR committee for the Assembly will be appointing 1 new member to the Eagle Crest board and either reappointing or appointing 2 other individuals to that board. And I'm kind of concerned with the direction the board's going. I was on there for 8 years. That whole 8 years, we were paying back $1 million that the Assembly, we refunded, not me, but they refunded to the season pass holders, and we paid it back. But that's where we deferred maintenance, locked in wages and didn't increase them.
Mr. Garrison, I have to have you wrap it up, but we do
Okay.
have your.
And you do have my thing. But anyway, please pick wisely for the new members of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Garrison? Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks for being here tonight, Mr. Garrison, and for providing this. So I'll dig into that. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question about the board and the appointments. The gondola process started, a little ways back. With your concern about the board's distraction, did that start with the gondola project, or did it start with just recently with the manager?
I am for the gondola project. Goes back to originally why Eagle Crest was developed, and I have that in that handout. No, my concern with the board is when you guys are doing a 6% pay raise with a loan, it's not sustainable. And you're going to lock the board into paying that back. I went to a board meeting. You guys saw the letter to the editor, I hope, or the opinion piece about it. It was not a good held meeting. Did not represent the city well. So my concerns are current.
Thanks, that was helpful.
All right, thank you, Mr. Garrison.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rick Harris. Please state your name and area of town you live in for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Rick Harris. I live in the Valley, and I was here mostly to pass on a little information, and that I have submitted my name to be on the Eagle Crest Board of Directors. There is a plan to have a review on July 2nd, and I will happen to be in the wilderness of not Bryce Canyon, but Flaming Gorge in Utah. So I won't be able to be here. So I felt at least I owed everybody the courtesy of showing up so you could see my face. So you go, who is Rick Harris? At least now you know. And I do have to say one other thing is I may need to declare a conflict because my daughter-in-law is the tourism director. So I need to at least inform you of that is any deliberations on my position or inclusion on that board. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your testimony. All right, that's my list for tonight. And did we get our person on Zoom? Okay. Amy. Yeah. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any public request for consent agenda changes other than ordinances for introduction? Seeing none, are there any assembly requests for consent agenda changes? Seeing none, assembly action. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the assembly adopts the consent agenda, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. So that moves us to public hearing. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-14, version B, large letter A, an ordinance appropriating $74,000 to the manager for the Crisis Stabilization Capital Improvement Project. Funding provided by a donation from the Bartlett Regional Hospital Foundation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Manager.
This ordinance would appropriate a $74,000 donation from the Bartlett Regional Hospital Foundation to the Crisis Stabilization CIP. This funding provides for furniture, fixtures, and equipment at the new Aurora Behavioral Health Center. While construction of the new facility is complete, work associated with leadership in energy and environmental design, operations, and maintenance certification remains, with final certification and project closeout expected within the next 12 months. The Systemic Racism Review Committee reviewed this ordinance at its May 14th, 2024 meeting. The Bartlett Finance Committee reviewed this request at its May 10th, 2024 meeting. The Bartlett Board of Directors and the Public Works and Facilities Committee reviewed this request at the May 28th and June 3rd meetings respectively. I recommend the Assembly hold public testimony and adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Is there any public wishing to testify on this ordinance? Seeing none, we will bring it to the Assembly. Ms. Hughes Candies.
I want to new business. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Assembly adopt ordinance 2023-14B AI, and I ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Any objection? Seeing none, that ordinance passes. Now we're on to new business. Item 23, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is hardship and senior citizen, disabled veteran, and nonprofit late filed real property tax exemption applications.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Manager.
There are 15 property owners that have requested the Assembly authorize the assessor to consider a late filed exemption for their property assessment. The Assembly should consider each request separately and determine whether the property owner was unable to comply with the April 30 filing requirement according to Alaska statute and CBJ City Code. The burden of proof is upon the property owner to show the inability to file a timely exemption request. If the Assembly decides to accept one or more late filed exemption requests, those applications will be referred to the assessor for review and action. I recommend the Assembly act on each of these applications individually.
Thank you, Madam Manager. We'll bring it back to the Assembly. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Assembly has considered each of these applications separately and determined that the following names should be exempt for the senior citizen and hardship. Forward to the assessor. Thank you. The names Matthew Barnaby, Lynn Stevens, Belinda Belasta, Stephen Byers, William McGooey, Gerald DeGuise, Charles Severance, Juanita Cornell, Patricia Fiorella, Howard Bruce Johnson, Charles Severance, Mary Miller, Stephen Snyder, Dolores Marion Healy, and Mary Skoltes. And I'd forward these to the assessors.
Any objection? Seeing none, they will get forward to back to the assessor. Madam Clerk, do you have a staff report? I mean, not Madam Clerk, Madam Manager, do you have a staff report?
No.
All right, that will move us on to Assembly reports. I was going to say a few things, but I've decided in the spirit of the sunny day, I will keep mine very brief. I am slowly getting back into Assembly business and starting to have meetings at my office, but I appreciate the public's patience in all this. I'm not quite ready for public functions yet, so I think Madam Deputy Mayor and Mr. Bryson's covered a few of my things too, so I appreciate your guys' covering my duties. With that, we will go to committee and liaison reports. I don't have Madam Deputy Mayor nor my finance. Ms. Hughes Candies, what are we doing on lands, housing, and economic development?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You saw it as part of your consent agenda tonight, the resolution to adjust the manufactured homes. A reminder for anyone who's not on that committee, the accessory dwelling unit grant money and the manufactured homes is all in one pool. So we needed to clean this up a little bit and catch it up for inflationary purposes. So we talked about that. We also talked about Blueprint Downtown, which we will be seeing as a committee of the whole, I think, next. Looked at some amendments and discussed what that could look like. And I also want to give a shout out to continue people's awareness on July 9th. The foreclosure home that is currently has a catalog out on it from the Lands Department at 520 6th Street is out there. So if you are interested, all the information is on the lands page. Coming up, we'll talk about Telephone Hill in our next meeting, and there is another thing that I know is on, and we'll also be talking about a lease that you saw in your consent agenda at the next lands meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Mr. Bryson.
Public Works and Facilities met. We discussed the Seawalk, something on Crow Hill, a Federal Transit Authority charging equipment grant for charging our buses. And we are beginning to go through the process of coming up with the community actions that will go in the Floyd Dryden and Marie Drake building. We're working on those rankings, and we have a water consumer confidence report that they're working on right now. And that's all for Public Works and Facilities, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Mr. Smith, Human Resources. I know you have some appointments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Thank you. At tonight's Human Resources Committee, just before this meeting, we have, darn it. Okay, I'm going to go. Tell me if it's not working. At tonight's Human Resources Committee meeting, the committee unanimously supported forwarding to the Assembly for appointment Matt Catterson to the Douglas Advisory Board for an unexpired term beginning immediately and ending September 30th, beginning October 1st, beginning immediately and ending September 30th, 2027. And I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, he is appointed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The committee also unanimously recommended, and I move the appointments of Ryan O'Shaughnessy, Adrian Scott, and Andrew Williams to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee for terms beginning immediately and ending April 30th, 2027. And I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, they are appointed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On that, Mr. Bryson wisely pointed out that just for us to thank Chris Myrtle for his long term of service aboard on the PRAC. He's been, I want to say, for nearly a decade. And anyway, just has taken a leadership role and just long years of service. So just want to appreciate and call that out specifically. We also, the committee also unanimously recommended, and I move the appointment of the reappointment, to the Historic Resources Advisory Committee, Shannon Crosley, Donald Harris, and Doreen Lorenz, all to full terms beginning July 1, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2027. And I ask for unanimous consent on that motion.
Any objection? Seeing none, they are appointed.
Very good. The committee also forwarded to the Assembly a resolution that will make some changes to the personnel rules, mainly codifying the voluntary match program that we had spoken about a year ago. And then it also is going to change the vesting age at which employees are 100% vested. But we'll be seeing that as a resolution. The last item I just want to bring up and just flag for people is that on July 1 and July 2, we will be doing appointments or interviews, at least, to the Empowered Airport, Docks and Harbor, and Eagle Crest boards. Not totally sure of the start times, but we'll likely start on July 1 before the regular Assembly meeting, and then do more interviews on July 2nd, the following day. We have about 22 applicants for those three boards. So likely going to need more than one day. So please just kind of note that in your calendars. The clerks are going to figure out a good plan for us with start times and stuff, but please expect to be meeting as the full body as the sitting as a Human Resources Committee on July 1 prior to the regular assembly meeting. That's all I had, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Would you get the appointees and their terms to Madam Clerk just to make sure she got them all? Okay. And we will say, because you are a little hard to serve, thank Mr. Myrtle for his service. He's been good advice on many topics, and we appreciate him serving in a year of transition between the two boards. So with that, we will go to presiding officer report and come back for the liaison reports and comments. Mr. Attorney, I think that's you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is in the Hart versus Planning Commission and Huna Totem Corporation appeal. Quick information update. The hearing officer is still working on a final draft decision. I don't quite know when it'll be ready, but just to remind everybody that sometimes these processes can take a while. It's not quite a year, and a year is kind of an average time frame from when we would get a final decision, even if we did it internally with us. So as soon as there is something final by the hearing officer will send it to the parties and to the city, and so we'll all get it at the same time.
All right, any questions for the attorney? I don't see anything, so you got off easily, Mr. Palmer. All right, with that, we will go back for liaison reports and comments and questions, and we'll go to Zoom first. Wahalgadock.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on that last report, I just want to send my condolences out to the family and loved ones of Fred Parody, as his sudden passing on Sunday. So just wanted to say that really quickly. I don't have a report from my liaison duties as it's been a crazy busy month. Did get a chance to dance and sing and introduce dance groups for celebration and watch my son dance, sing, demonstrate NYO and model over 10 different times on stage during celebrations. So hopefully folks are able to make it. It was an amazing affair. The next host dance group of celebration will be a Simshan dance group out of Anchorage, and excited to see them in 2 years. That's it for me.
Thank you, proud mama. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wanted to second the condolences to Mr. Parody and his family. Very, very tragic. He was a good, hardworking person and did a lot for his communities that he's lived in across his life. I attended a Bartlett Regional Health community meeting. There was no DBA meeting this month. The Alaska Committee has been focused on some regional and other events just to continue to show why Juneau is such a great capital city for Alaska. And then the school board met to do some prioritization and planning to restore programs and staff depending on the amount of state funding they get. So that's my update from the school board. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I went to the Bartlett Board of Directors meeting, and that happened right before the joint meeting. And they kind of gave the same presentation, so that way they had all their information fresh when we had the Bartlett and Assembly joint meeting. The city attorney search for that committee is meeting this Thursday, the 20th at noon. And Mr. Hargrave is going to be giving us an update on the applications that have been turned in so far. I was going to also mention Fred Parody. He has been in this room many nights, hanging out with us all night long. And then I did run into an individual in the community. Her name is Jenny. She actually was able to move to Juneau to retire to live in Trillium Landing. And she wanted me to share how senior friendly she found the community to be. So she was living in South Carolina. Her family was up here. When she had the chance, she came and is living at the senior facility that we helped create. And she finds Juneau to be extremely senior friendly. And I wanted to share that with all of you because we've been working on it. That's my report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I missed the last meeting of the Systemic Racism Review Committee, so I do not have a report from there. The report from Travel Juneau is that they are fully staffed. They've been hosting travel media over the last few weeks, and they have 4 more upcoming, and that's documenting travel to Juneau, and they use that in all of their advertisement for independent travelers. They have 10 million in meetings upcoming, and they were expressing some concerns. It continues to be a nexus point over how our hotel prices are, but obviously our hotel industry struggles just like any of our other industries. So I think we've seen the price for everything going up, and I'm sure there's good reasons for that. They expressed interest that as the city does anything with short-term rentals, that they would just like to keep them in mind. They would like to be part of the conversation and be included in that. I did get to attend a lot of celebration this year. It was amazing. Just a heartfelt Ganesha Shala to everyone who traveled here, all of our people who live here who participated. It was really something to see. And wish everyone a happy Pride. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Ms. Atkinson.
I would also like to start by wishing everyone a happy Pride. This is our first time I've gotten to say it since Pride Month. I attended the JCOS meeting on June 5th. There were lots to talk about, a bunch of different sustainability grants that the city's applying for, as well as the waste characterization study that should be, I think, available to us in the end of June was the timeline I discussed. But also wanted to acknowledge 2 members of JCOS will not be continuing their service on JCOS, and they're longtime members who've put in a lot of hours and really done a lot of work outside and inside that committee, Gretchen Kaiser and Steve Benke, and I wanted to take this moment to thank them for their service and their time they spent for the city.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I will start by also wishing Juneau a happy Pride Month and extending my condolences to the Parody family. I didn't know Fred well, but I did see him throughout the community, and I know his presence both here and in the State House in Wyoming will be missed. With my liaison reports, the Planning Commission met twice since our last Assembly meeting. They canceled their meeting on the 11th. I attended the Emergency Planning Committee meeting on the 12th. And that meeting, there was no presentation that meeting. It was just a delivery of reports. There was also no School Board Finance Committee meeting, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and welcome back from a nice vacation. So I missed celebration because I was out of town, but I did get to see some videos and some pictures, and got to see a video of the blanket toss. That was pretty awesome, and got to see pictures of the toddlers. That's my favorite part. Happy Pride Month, and I'll try to get through this, but I wish Lisa Paraday the best, and that's all I can say about that. So we will, any other things before the Assembly tonight? Everybody wants to get out of this hot room, so we are adjourned.
Hi all.